Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Bonnell from the Queen Anne Community Council. Thank you for coming. Everyone's muted and your videos are off. Thank you. We've got chat open. We are waiting for Ann to arrive. She had just called me a minute ago. She was on her way to sign in, so hopefully she'll be here momentarily. Thank you for your patience. Ah, there she is. Hi, Ann. I think Paula's just going to make you a co-host so that then you can unmute yourself and turn your video on, and then we'll get started.
I'm going to mute myself.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay, all right, welcome, thank you. Okay, I'm Beth, as I said, from the Queen Anne Community Council, and we're so glad that you can make it. We hope that your family emergency has been abated. We've got Jeff Strong, the Assistant Attorney General for the state of Washington, who's going to do, I'm not going to call it moderating, I'm going to call it interviewing, talking, running the discussion. We already talked about the housekeeping. We've got the videos and audio muted, and this meeting is being recorded. We'll put it up on our website it goes up pretty quickly, and we'll make sure to share it. So thank you very much, Jeff and Ann, and we look forward to hearing your discussion.
Thank you. Hi, Ann. Great to meet you. And I will say that I am not here in my capacity as a Washington Attorney General's Office lawyer. I'm here in my private capacity. But in any event, it's a pleasure to chat with you this afternoon, and thank you so much for making yourself available for this.
Likewise, it's good to meet you. And I give my caveat beforehand. I have 2 dogs, and I've had spotty connection over the last 24 hours. So, and pardon my being late to our meeting, but thank you for making time for me.
Yeah, I know it's busy in the final days or final weeks of your campaign. I'm going to ask you a series of questions to open up our conversation. They're questions that we prepared that we think the community in our community would want to know. With the change of the format that we have here, where it's not 2 candidates appearing at the same time, it does allow us to have a bit more of a conversation. But I would still ask you if you could, because we have a number of questions to get through, to try to keep your responses relatively short. There are so many topics raised by this fascinating race to replace Pete Holmes, and we still want to leave, if possible, time for audience questions at the end. So let me jump in to my first question for you. And you ran for city council in 2019 and then lieutenant governor as a Republican in 2020, and now Seattle attorney in 2021. What, if anything, do these 3 positions have in common that explain to voters why you're now running for city attorney?
I really appreciate that question. I've lived in Seattle for 25 years. And first lived on Queen Anne, lived and worked in Queen Anne. So that's my first neighborhood. I don't have the E, but that was often what, my friends and family who were talked about when I told them the name of the neighborhood where I lived, they mentioned that. And so I've lived here for 25 years, an attorney for 17 of those. And what has clearly been important to me is this city. That has been my relentless pursuit, is to see our city in a way that is balanced, where we are talking about safety in a way that is balanced, where we are addressing the clearly needs of our most vulnerable that are here within our city. As I parent and have to try to explain to developing young minds as why we clearly are having people in need and it's not getting adequately addressed. When I can recall working in a refugee camp on the border of Cambodia where people were fleeing civil war and that those conditions were more humane and hygienic than what we have left people at the literal margins of our city, it is my tireless pursuit for the future of our city and for people who are ignored, stepped over, and discounted on a regular basis. As everyone hurries about life, it is time to speak about these things in a sense of urgency. And always within that is the sense of safety, because that is a sense that not everyone has. But it needs to be there for every sector and every season of life within the city of Seattle. And that is the only reason why I've ever entered into politics is simply because of the state of our city. That was why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And then tell me the connection. What was driving you for lieutenant governor in your race for lieutenant governor and to enter the race for lieutenant governor?
It's also about looking at things that are occurring and are they working? When we need to have a more broad mind as to what types of approaches do we need to be talking about, open to discussing, that is the space I think that we are going to be the most meaningfully able to provide intervention in some of these social issues that we've been talking about here in the city for years. And so when we see a closing off or a sense of bullying that can take place in any type of environment, that is not going to be a place where we can talk with civility and respect about what's working and what's not in an objective way. And that's what I've talked about always within regards to the city of Seattle. And that's all that I've been about.
And so I take it then your running for lieutenant governor was driven by your concern about the closing off or the sense of civility, loss of sense of civility?
Well, when you're looking at our city, we are an economic engine for things, right? It is the place where a lot of policy is set and it overflows into other areas. And so this is a place where the conversation matters because it has impact. And that is where we need to be making sure we have that, again, sense of a broad-minded, objective viewpoint of what are we trying to accomplish and how do we get there. And we have to be willing to have conversation that is meaningful if something is not working.
Let me turn to my second question. And would you change the city attorney's office from how it runs under Pete Holmes' administration? And if so, what are the top 3 specific operational changes you'd make?
I think it's not just a cut and dry yes or no answer to that top question. I think one thing that will help a lot is a sense of transparency. I think that this race has now opened up our social conversation here in the city as to what does the city attorney do, what is its role, how does it function, and what is it supposed to be providing for the city. And I see that as a role that is a leader. It is not someone that is in court on a daily basis. It is someone who is an advisor. It is someone who can build trust and rapport like we would in a normal attorney-client relationship, where there is impartial legal advice provided, and not policy or political advice, but really one that is maintaining, so to speak, staying in the lane of being an attorney. We elect people to create policy, make difficult decisions on behalf of our city. And the role of attorney is to provide a legal framework and strategies by which they can make choices. And I think that's a key part for me, particularly in regards to my opponent, that I want to make sure that we understand that role, that is what I want to have for our public to understand, is that transparency part where what are we doing there? What's working? Is there some data that we can have that's visible for the public? similar to what the King County Prosecutor's Office has at the dashboard level there. So understanding what is the role, where can we have a positive impact on public safety that can be done in a way that's informational for us as a city. That's the main part for me.
Are there specific changes that you would envision making to the policy decisions that Pete Holmes has made in managing the city attorney's office?
I think that we do need to have standards that are known. I think that we've had a sense of not an overall management style that is to look at the entire department as a whole and understanding different roles there. And again, that's a somewhat of a personal approach and how we navigate within relationships across department, across agency, and within the department. I want to make sure that we are providing consistent legal advice, so no matter who's asking the question, that the answer is consistent. And I think that that is a different way that I'd like to make sure is clear for our elected officials and people who are running various departments within our city, so that our public can understand what that role is.
Okay, thank you. I want to turn to a topic that I don't anticipate us spending a lot of time on, but as you know, it was on the front page of our Seattle Times today. So I would like to give you a chance to address it. In June 2020, you recorded a video for the #WalkAway YouTube channel, which is organized by someone whose social media identity was the promoter of Democrats for Trump. And I realize this was in the midst of your lieutenant governor campaign, but could you explain to us why you recorded that video?
The video is really just personal for me, and any association is not to be made with anything other than that. And in that you can hear me honestly discuss, and I apologize, I do get emotional when I speak about it because the city of Seattle is such a deep-hearted place, but it is very difficult to come to terms with why we have allowed the plight of people to be used, which seems to me, as I put myself in a position of a member of the general public, to use the plight of people for a political purpose. And again, to try to explain this to young minds who are processing this, the social modeling we are allowing to occur, whether there's adult conversation with them or not, is there. And frankly, it's even there for new people who come to our city. I spoke with a man who told me about his first day at work. He got off the bus. This was a few years ago. He told me the story. That a few years ago, he got off at the bus downtown, and there was a person that was clearly somehow not able to take care of themselves. Pardon me, got a call that calls in. It's connected to this iPad. I apologize, it clicked up there. But he was shocked, right? Like, oh my goodness, we need to stop and help. And everyone else just kept walking on. And he just followed in line and walked on past. And he told me how shameful he felt for having chosen to do that he just assimilated into the, oh, well, I guess we don't do anything here. And so that is purely the reason why I speak out, because that person that he walked around is unable to speak out. And I do want to stress that this is a very personal thing, just because I'm adopted. I decided to run in this race at the deathbed of my birth mother the day before filing, because it is an important race to positively impact public safety in our city. And I have a capacity and a capability because of the sacrifice of a teenage mom who gave me up for adoption. And so when I talk about it, I'm very cognizant of the fact that things could have been very different. And so when I speak like that, it is because I feel obligated to use the skills that I have to speak for those who are not able to. And when we're talking in that space, that is the pure motivation as to everything I'm doing.
I'd like to turn your attention to the police department and ask you a question about the department and the union contract. In 2011, the Department of Justice found the Seattle Police had engaged in a pattern or practice of constitutional violations and the use of force, and raised serious questions about a pattern or practice of discriminatory policing. Now, 10 years later, in a February 2021 court hearing, Judge Robart said the city is still out of compliance with the resulting consent decree in the areas of police discipline and accountability. What changes, if any, in your view, are needed for the city's next contract with the Seattle Police Union?
Well, as the advisory role, right, that is going to be a decision based upon what our elected people decide to do. I think that it's important, as I've served as an arbitrator, I understand awards can get challenged, and I think that's a significant piece that should be reviewed, and letting them understand that. Pardon me one second. And I think that particularly what he also has said, that if we were to defund the police, that would also have us out of compliance. So it's important to understand that we need to have constitutional policing. That means better policing. I like to use the term that I've heard, which is relational policing, which is what I think communities are supporting. When I have the endorsement of police reform leaders, because they say we want reform and safety. It is about accountability. It is to be there unquestionably. It doesn't mean that they do not want them. It is better. We want better, and what I call relational, what people in the call that a holistic, a multidisciplinary approach, so that every community has a sense of safety. Again, because when we just look at human nature, if people are in that fight or flight mode, we're not going to make decisions other than self-preservation. And again, when we need to free up time, talent, and treasure, so the rest of our society can function and focus on other needs, that's where we're going to be better serving everyone.
Are there any specific changes that you would advocate or support to the Seattle Police Department's contract?
I think it's important, again, to note that we have an observer role, and I think that staying in my lane is important to just provide that guidance. Sorry, I have a little dog that is now going to start to bark. I apologize. Don't get up.
That's
I'm
okay.
going to put you on mute really fast because I think.
And let me turn to another question for you. Have misdemeanor prosecutions in our city harmed people of color, and in our city, African American and Native Americans in particular, because of the history of racism in our country? And if elected, what specific steps, if any, do you plan to take to address the consequences of racial bias built into the criminal justice system?
I think that we absolutely cannot deny that has been the sad circumstances that have occurred in our system. I apologize, Dan. Evidently people think I'm supposed to be headed on to something else. I apologize.
No.
I forget that I'm connected to this. If we were in person, we wouldn't have that interruption at all. But it is, of course, and there's any action that we're talking about is to not be in any way a denial of that or an invalidation of that. But it is a way to make sure that we are, again, improving and looking at the reform that is necessary, completely dismantling the criminal division, completely saying we don't need police, or saying we would not prosecute most misdemeanor crime, is not going to be a way to usher in safety. It will usher in more harm, more chaos, disorder, and lawlessness. And when we're talking about people, victimization of crime, it also is communities of color. When we're talking about our Black residents in the city, of 7%, 26% are often victims of violent crime, and 62% of homicide. That's unacceptable. So not only has it been what the the premise of the question said, but also as far as those who are having to endure being victims. And so again, when we talk about a sense of safety, it needs to be in every sector. When I'm a youth soccer coach for my kids' team for the past 6 years, and there's youth football going on in Judkins Park, and there's gunfires that we had just a couple weeks ago in the middle of the day on a Saturday when young kids are playing football. We need to make sure we're keeping all types of communities safe. And so we would not ever want to deny what the premise of that question said. And the way we move forward is to make sure that we are looking at things always in that race and social justice initiative, which is city attorney is part of, and making sure that we do that to the best of our ability.
And again, let me just ask if there are any changes you would make to what Mr. Holmes has done in order to address, are there any changes in the way you would manage the criminal division and the prosecution of misdemeanors to address the historical bias that is part of the criminal justice system and African Americans and Native Americans role or the way that they have been pulled into the criminal justice system?
I think to making sure that there is a set way by which prosecutors observe that there's been any of that within the policing aspect, that there's a way to report that directly to OPA, I think is an important aspect. There's not a standardized way to do that. And I think that's an important aspect when we're looking at the video in conjunction with reports and seeing if there's another check and balance that we can provide for that, so that that doesn't provide another way that more harm is done. That's going to be one of the first ways I think we can look at that.
Okay. And does the city attorney, in your view, need criminal law experience? And of course, the attendant question would be, what criminal law experience do you bring if the position does need criminal law experience?
Well, if people are not familiar, Pete Holmes was a bankruptcy attorney prior to being elected. And so what I think really is the most important part is a sense of character and leadership. The city attorney sets the tone and direction, as I will do, and I will hire subject matter experts. That means a criminal division head, and in conjunction with that person and the people that are there, many of whom I've spoken with, and understanding how they view their work. Again, one woman specifically, when she was in the domestic violence unit as a prosecutor, because none of them have talked about that it's putting someone. Put it this way, when she looked at that work, she described herself as a murder prevention attorney. And so when we have someone in that role who is a leader, who can talk in a way that is going to unify, bring stakeholders together across agency and across department and across jurisdictions to interconnect what we call together our public safety system, which is also our justice system. That is the way that we see real progress on large issues within our society. And we can do it in a compassionate way, but someone who only has public defense work, criminal defense work, who has not been involved in a way of providing advice to entities, which is what our municipality is, it's a municipal corporation, I think is really the most important. I've been practicing for 17 years and an arbitrator on the advisory side of providing preventative legal advice. And I think that is really the most important aspect of city attorney. I apologize, is there someone else joining us? I didn't know.
No, not that I know of. There is no. What are you seeing? There's the other people who are organizing this for the Community Council. Maybe you're seeing their video feed.
No, I just saw Nicole's photo pop up, so I just didn't know if you had a segment differentiation. It just all of a sudden popped up, so I hadn't seen it before.
I did not see that. So
Okay. I don't know
can't
if she,
explain it, but we'll ask the organizers when they get on what that's
Okay.
about. Okay.
it just showed up. That's why I
Okay. Well, let me turn your attention before we run out of time to the
Yeah.
civil division. Civil division of the city attorney's office doesn't get a lot of attention during the campaign, but it's the largest component of the city attorney's office. What changes, if any, would you make to the way Pete Holmes has managed the civil division in the city attorney's office?
Here go my dogs. I apologize. I don't
They
quite know.
don't like my question.
As soon as one goes, the other goes. I'm sorry. I did succumb to the kids' persuasive essays of getting a copy in the pandemic.
We can hear you. We can
Okay.
still hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's after school time. I think that it's important to make sure that, again, there's a sense of consistency, that when the question is asked to various segments within the civil side, when a similar question is asked, a consistent legal advice is provided. And again, that is set from the top down, where there's a coordination, there's a managerial style that is collaborative, that is working together, that is listening to the lawyers that are there, and understanding that we set that from the top down about making sure that we provide that consistency for those who are elected and hired to run the various departments of our city, because we don't represent the individuals, we represent the entity, our city, and we help guide those people understand what the law says so they can make the decisions best for them. I'm going to put you on mute.
I was going to say, Ann, you have tremendous powers of concentration, which is a good skill for using Zoom from home. I have one last question for you on the civil division. Ann, the current city attorney has retained private law firms to assist the city attorney's office in bringing civil litigation, like the lawsuit against opioids manufacturers. And that can result when we end up paying the lawyers from the private sector and using public funds to pay private counsel to represent the people of Seattle. Do you have a view on using public money to pay outside counsel to handle civil litigation for you?
I think, sorry, I did have a kid distraction there who's going to start drum lessons. So we're going to make sure we do close it up for you, because that will really be the distraction of all parts there. I think it's important to look at the dollar amount. I think that we have seen a significant increase. And if there's something that means that we are looking at retention of really good, talented lawyers, because we really need that law department to be top notch. Providing that legal advice as best that we can, and when need be, only look to going outside. I think that's a role that we can look at and have improvement on. And again, listening to those who are in that role right now, of which I've spoken to many, that it's an important part for our city attorney to have that side, and that is my experience. Again, is on the civil side, which, as you said in the part of the question, is the larger part of the law department, particularly as far as the budget as well. So we can look at that, and whether or not we bring things more in-house, or whether we look at having those be outside counsel. Having worked at a downtown law firm, I understand how those things work, and look forward to being able to make improvements where we need to, so that the city of Seattle is protected and defended, and even just as simple as looking at tort litigation for sidewalks. What can we do that are preventative, right? This is an area of which we can look at what can we do in advising different departments to be preventative in nature, so that we can lessen some of those need as you described.
Now, I don't know when drum lessons start, Ann, but do you have time for, if there are questions from our members of the audience, do you have time to answer a few of those questions?
I think yeah, a couple of minutes, but I think we're gonna hit the buzzer.
Okay.
Okay, if anybody wants to post in chat, that would be great. We did have one that was submitted in advance, Ann, and I think that it was a little bit. You kind of talked a little bit about it with respect to the video question, but it says, Ann, I know some folks are wary of voting for you because you identify as Republican. Yet in an article in February 2020, it mentions that when you first moved to Seattle from Texas, you were a Democrat. Can you explain why you switched parties? and why folks should still vote for you if you're now identifying as a Republican, and what you'll do differently as city attorney. There's a lot of pieces to that.
That's a lot of pieces of that. And really the best thing is for people to go to my political value statement on my website, neighborsforann.com, which anyone is free to read. And I'm an independent thinker and a Seattle mom, not an activist ideologue. And I think that that's really the most important part to understand. And it's vitally important to have that as we implement our laws to enhance public health and safety. And if you can look at who is backing me, to have the endorsements from two former governors, Democratic governors, Gary Locke, Christine Gregoire, both attorneys, Gregoire having served as our Attorney General of our state as well as many professional attorneys, formerly elected prosecutors, and 30 retired judges, 2 former state Supreme Court justices, and presiding judges at a Seattle municipal court. It's important to see the entire gamut there, which I've been told is noteworthy, that is unusual, that people of that stature have entered into a municipal race, because it is a very serious race. I hear every day people talking about whether or not they will stay in Seattle, whether it's their business or them individually, is determinant upon the outcome of this race, because it is about the city of Seattle. It is about its future, and how are we going to make sure that we are talking about safety in a way that has compassion, and make sure that we are helping people in a way that we can provide that meaningful intervention, and of freeing up again the time and attention so that everyone else can function in a way that is getting us forward in progress on large substantial issues that we've all been talking about for a long time. And I hear the dinger going for the drummer, so it will start.
Can we get one more in? We have one more question from the chat, if you have time, Anne, before the drums start. That sounds ominous.
I know, it's great, but it is loud, and it's right underneath where I'm sitting, so it will not be quiet.
Okay, well, let's try to do one more.
Okay.
Would you prosecute more misdemeanors than the current city attorney, about the same or fewer? How would you approach crimes of need?
I think that it's important to see that when we are talking about prosecution, it is not just everyone goes to jail type of approach. That's not ever what that means. But it does mean that we are looking at when it is necessary, and making sure that we have accountability. And so that is going to mean different things in different ways. But it is also the place to intervene. I speak about it in a way that we have a social obligation to understand why someone is communicating in the form of a crime. If someone is communicating in that form, I think we have failed them socially over and over again. And so again, but the role of city attorney is to provide the meaningful limit there that our laws set. Our laws are societal values reflected in those laws, and they need to show that they are meaningful to us. It's so that I don't harm you and you don't harm me. This is how we conduct ourselves, again, so that municipal government can provide that public safety, so people don't feel that it is incumbent upon them to do so. Thank you all for listening. I'll let you know a few more endorsements at the Seattle Times. Again, police reform leaders here in our city, many professional attorneys, former electeds, and it is really important to see the wide coalition of people in this campaign. It is completely grassroots. Again, I have just been someone who has been moved to put so much of my time and energy into our city, because I want to see and hear, frankly, a voice that talks about a way of unity, commonalities, and never negating what we have gone through in the midst of that. So it is always with the blend, always together, because that's the way we are going to have true progress in our city on meaningful issues, so that what our children and socially inherit can be better than what they have found us in now. Thank you for your time so much.
And thank you. I'd like to thank both Ann and Jeff for taking time out of your busy schedules and for convening so quickly. We appreciate it. And Jeff, thanks for doing a great job as our leader today in the meeting. And with that, thanks everyone for joining us. We appreciate it. And we will send you a link to the video recording of the meeting today. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Bye-bye.